A human ecosystem has two central organizing concepts: critical resources and the social system. Within the critical resources house our biophysical, socioeconomic, and cultural resources. The social system is composed of three subsystems: social institutions, which would be things like family, health, law, politics, religion; social cycles, which are physiological, institutional, and environmental; and social order. Now, within social order, we find identity. And that's age, race, gender, orientation. We also find social norms, and then we find hierarchy. Now, within hierarchy, we find wealth, power, and status. The resources keep the social system functioning. Their flow and distribution are critical to sustainability. The flow and use of these critical resources is regulated by the social system, and each component of the subsystems greatly influences and substantially influences the others. So they're all interrelated. Now, we are born into this human ecosystem, our purest, most authentic selves, full of curiosity and discovery, creativity and innovation, until our environment, perceptions, beliefs, and influences begin to layer on the thickness of conformity, disparity, and separation between who we truly are and who we find ourselves forced to present within this often dysfunctional model. Here we are faced with two choices at a crossroads: continue to wear the mask and live a counterfeit life, or dare to be you in such a way that inspires, impacts, and influences the entire paradigm within this ecosystem. Authenticity has become the gold standard of both personal and leadership development. Talent development organizations coach it, corporate D&I encourage it, companies desire it within their cultural framework, and employees hunger after it from their leaders. So cliche, yet so elusive. So sought after, yet so misinterpreted. You see, authenticity, it's about daring greatly, leaning into fear and discomfort in such a way that revolutionizes the way we live and the way we lead. When we tap into the purest part of ourselves, that part that unlocks our uniqueness, and we all have it, our authenticity is magnetic. And we've seen this, right? We all know someone that seems to have such a draw of people from all walks of life. I mean, people can't seem to get enough of their connection and engagement. And it leaves others questioning and scratching their heads, wondering why and how. It's the magnetism of their authenticity. Philosophically, authenticity is the degree to which we are true to our own personality, spirit, and character, despite external pressures. It requires courage, exposure, and transparency. Poet E.E. Cummings said it best when he said, "To be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best night and day to make you everybody but yourself means to fight the hardest battle that any human being can ever fight." You see, keeping it real, staying real, that's one of the most courageous battles we will have on this human experience. Personally, my background and childhood experiences both shaped and prepared me for the bravery and the boldness in which I'd have to live and lead. I'm African American, I'm a woman, and I'm a lesbian. And it's interesting because each diverse part of me comes with its own set of societal biases, prejudices, and oppressions. It goes back to the social system within the human ecosystem that we talked about. Yet, I find myself in the unique space of being able to relate to the oppressions and the pressures within all of these diverse groups for acceptance and inclusion. Everybody desires it. Still, I refuse to allow myself to be dominated and controlled by the fears of others. These are teachable moments. And the only way we will create a welcoming and inclusive workplace and society that we all desire is to eliminate fear. And we do that by educating, sharing, and telling our stories with confidence, with pride, and without shame. See, the opposite of fear is not courage. It's actually security. The more we see that we have a shared vision and shared values for our families, our workplaces, and our communities, the more secure we feel. And then and only then can the fear be replaced with acceptance. And acceptance doesn't mean agreement. It simply means we make space for each other's differences. There's a quote by Robert Greene Ingersoll that really drives us home. And he says, tolerance is giving to every other human being every right that you claim for yourself. Being authentic has required an incredible amount of fearlessness, vulnerability, and audacity on my part. I've had to walk some very less traveled roads to reach this place of pure authenticity. And there's only one version of me. I don't present myself one way in the office and a different way outside of it. See, when you take off your mask, transformation begins. But I had to be willing to put in the internal, introspective work of uncovering who I was and determining if that image was the best representation of me. Then I had to be courageous enough to express it. You see, the question isn't, can other people handle your truth? The question really is, can you handle being you? Authenticity has allowed me to maintain and build some very trusting working relationships. It's allowed me to lead from such a genuine place. And let me tell you, when you embark upon that type of journey, it's transformative, it's fluid, it's liberating. And I will never surrender my power, my voice, or my uniqueness again. Rather than using my energy, covering certain aspects of myself, which, by the way, takes an incredible amount of unproductive energy. I can use that energy to renew our very fragile and fractured human ecosystem, to pursue ultimate life fulfillment, to mentor, inspire, and influence others, to drive business results, and to build and sustain very meaningful relationships. It's all about relationships in this human experience. And when I've done that, I then have an obligation, a responsibility to be a change agent, a champion, an authenticity ambassador, to give someone else the support and encouragement they need to take that courageous step. In the workplace, we hear about this concept of bringing your whole self to work. That's like the new buzzword, bring your whole self to work. But why is it so important, and what does it really mean? It's about bringing the best of who we are and sharing it with others. It's about bringing the best of who we are to the work that we do. Sounds simple, right? Well, sure. With someone that looks like us and sounds like us, thinks like us, acts like us, and comes from the same background as us. But when we integrate with others that have differences across the entire spectrum of that social system, our perceptions about diversity are challenged. And the engagement becomes uncomfortable for everyone, but especially for those perceived to be different. And different doesn't mean deficit. To truly have an inclusive culture, we must be willing to have those heart-pounding, dry-mouth conversations. Without them, perceptions will never change. When I got married, my wife was pregnant with our first child. Of course, it was a very joyous experience. Also came a lot of questions. There naturally came a point when I needed to share that information with my manager, with my colleagues, and with my employees. But I had to ask myself if I was ready to handle all the questions, passive-aggressive behaviors, micro inequities, rumors, and office gossip. But then I was reminded that I was proud of myself and who I was. And I was certainly proud of my beautiful family. I realized that the only way to change the culture was to drive the change. Masking myself was not an option. Covering exhausts so much unproductive and unprofitable energy that, quite frankly, can be used in more positive ways. But companies have to create welcoming and inclusive cultures in order to promote and encourage employees to bring all of themselves authentically to work. And that's why strong D&I programs like employee resource groups are vital to organizations. Inauthenticity impacts employee morale and engagement, which ultimately impacts a company's brand, bottom line, and customer experience. On top of that, when we engage with other people, they can sense we're holding something back because it's all about the energy exchange, right? So they sense we're holding something back. And ultimately, from a team perspective, a customer perspective, a client perspective, it can impact trust and credibility. The Deloitte University Leadership Center for Inclusion published a report back in 2013, and it was called Uncovering Talent, in which they revealed that 61% of all employees cover their identities in some way, most notably including close to half of all white males within that survey. Not necessarily hiding something, but downplaying it for fear of drawing unwanted attention or making others uncomfortable. A gay person might technically be out, but not display pictures of his or her spouse in the office. A working mom may never talk about her kids so she can appear serious and committed to her company, to her organization, to her career and career progression. A straight white man might keep quiet about a mental health issue he's facing. A minority might change their name, language, and cultural practice just to fit in. The report goes on to say that full inclusion in the workplace remains elusive, noting that only 3.2% of senior executive positions in the nation's biggest companies are held by African Americans. Only 14% are held by women. And there is only one openly gay CEO heading a Fortune 500 company. We've got work to do. Masking myself is not an option. There are three things that matter to every human being. Do you see me? Do you hear me? Do I matter? To attract the best people and succeed as a business, the authentic organization of the future, where people are valued as their best selves, must be an environment that fosters creativity and innovation. and also an environment where employees feel engaged and committed, where it's not a system based on scarcity, fear, dominance, or interdependent systems of discrimination and disadvantage, but a system based on trust, acceptance, inclusion, integrity, and stewardship. There's too much work to do. Masking myself is not an option. Thank you.